হ্যালো স্টুডেন্ট, এই ভিডিওটি শুরু করার আগে যারা এই চ্যানেলে নতুন এবং যারা প্রথম ভিডিওটি দেখছেন তো তাদের সবাইকে বলা হচ্ছে চ্যানেলটি সাবস্ক্রাইব করার জন্য এবং বন্ধুদের কাছে শেয়ার করার জন্য। তো এবার শুরু করতে চলছি। হোয়াট ইজ মিন্ড বাই সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড? আফটার দি সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়ার, the East European countries that Soviet army had liberated from the fascist forces came under the control of USSR. These countries were called Second World. বলা হচ্ছে আফটার দি সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়ার, দ্বিতীয় বিশ্বযুদ্ধের পর ইস্ট ইউরোপিয়ান কান্ট্রিজ দ্য সোভিয়েত আর্মি হ্যাড লিবারেটেড, সোভিয়েত আর্মিতে যেগুলো দেশ স্বাধীন হয়েছে এইগুলো নিয়ে যেগুলো ইউএসএসআর থেকে আলাদা হয়েছিল এইগুলো নিয়ে রাশিয়া কি একটি গ্রুপ বানিয়েছিল। এই পুরোপুরি টোটাল গ্রুপগুলোকে একসাথে বলা হতো সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড। Write the full form of CIS. The full form of CIS is Commonwealth of Independent State is a loose confederation of 12 former Soviet republics. এই যখন ইউএসএসআর যে কান্ট্রিটি ছিল 1991 এটি ভেঙে যাওয়ার পর এটা টুকরো ভাবে হয়েছিল, ভাগ হয়ে গিয়েছিল। এই টুকরো পরদিকে ভাগ হওয়া অংশগুলোকে নিয়ে একসাথে রাশিয়া একটি গ্রুপ বানিয়েছিল। সেই গ্রুপের নাম হলো CIS. When did USSR come into being? The USSR came into being after October Revolution of 1917. বলছেন ইউএসএসআর কখন গঠন হয়েছিল? 1917 রিভলিউশনের পর ইউএসএসআর গঠন হয়েছিল। When did the bipolar structure of world politics come to an end? With the end of the Cold War. কোল্ড বলা হচ্ছে শীতল যুদ্ধ শেষ হওয়ার পর, অ্যান্ড দি ডিসইন্টিগ্রেশন অফ দি সোভিয়েত ইউনিয়ন, এবং সোভিয়েত ইউনিয়ন ইউএসএসআর টুকরো হওয়ার পর, যেমন রাশিয়া, ইউক্রেন, এইসব আরও যে তার সঙ্গে 15টি দেশ ছিল একসাথে ছিল, এগুলো আলাদা আলাদা হওয়ার পর দি বাইপোলার international system ended and the US remained as the only superpower in contemporary world politics. Who was Mikhail Gorbachev? Mikhail Gorbachev was the last leader of USSR. He introduced political and economic reforms in USSR. He followed politics of perestroika and glasnost. He stopped arms race with USSR. He withdrew Soviet troops from Afghanistan and Eastern Europe. He is held responsible for the disintegration of USSR, and Cold War ended with the collapse of USSR. Briefly discuss about the consequences of disintegration of the USSR. The collapse of the Soviet Union had the following important consequences. সোভিয়েত ইউনিয়ন ধ্বংস হওয়ার পরিণতি স্বরূপ হয়েছিল, ইট মিন্ট দি এন্ড অফ দ্য কোল্ড ওয়ার, দ্বিতীয় বিশ্বযুদ্ধ শেষ হওয়া, অ্যান্ড দি বাইপোলার ইন্টারন্যাশনাল সিস্টেম, এবং দ্বিপাক্ষিক ইন্টারন্যাশনাল সিস্টেম শুরু হওয়া। 2 নম্বর, দি এন্ড অফ কোল্ড ওয়ার মিন্ট দি এন্ড অফ দ্য আর্মস রেস। দ্বিতীয় বিশ্বযুদ্ধ শেষ হওয়া, শীতল যুদ্ধ শেষ হওয়া মানে আর্মস রেসের দিক থেকে শেষ হওয়া। দি এন্ড অফ দ্য কোল্ড ওয়ার চেঞ্জড দি পাওয়ার রিলেশনস ইন ওয়ার্ল্ড পলিটিক্স। দি বাইপোলার সিস্টেম ended and the unipolar system emerged. বাইপোলার সিস্টেম শেষ হলো এবং ইউনিপোলার সিস্টেম এককেন্দ্রিক ক্ষমতা জাগিয়ে উঠল। দি ইউএসএ রিমেইন্ড এজ দ্য অনলি সুপার পাওয়ার, ইউএসএ অনলি সুপার পাওয়ার বনে গেল। The capitalist economy became the dominant economic system. অর্থনীতির মধ্যে ক্যাপিটালিস্ট পুঁজিবাদী অর্থব্যবস্থা জেগে উঠল। The international financial institutions like IBRD and IMF became powerful institutions. Number 4. The Central Asian countries established ties with the West, the USSR, China, and others. Number 5. The end of the Soviet bloc meant the rise of many new states. The Baltic and East European states became members of the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Question number 7. What is meant by shock therapy in post-communist regime? Authoritarian socialist system existed in communist countries with the disintegration of Soviet Union. The process changed from authoritarian socialist system to democratic socialist system started in the countries, and this process of change is called shock therapy. Question number 8. How did the super relation in world politics change after the Soviet disintegration? Number 1. Soviet disintegration meant the end of the Cold War and the bipolar international system. 2 number. The Soviet disintegration meant the end of the arms race and unipolar system emerged. The USA remained as the only superpower. Question number 9. How did the Soviet disintegration lead to the end of Cold War confrontations? Question number 10. Same as question number 8. Which states is the successor of the Soviet Union? Russia is the successor. You say USSR successor states. What did the Soviet Union disintegration? The Soviet political system was authoritarian. The people was not satisfied with the system. The Soviet economy did not improve. The government failed to fulfill the economic aims and aspiration of the people. Number 3. The Soviet government used much of its resources to maintain nuclear military arsenal. Number 4. Ordinary Soviet citizens became aware of the economic advance of the West. They could see the wide gap that existed between their system, the system of the West. This Soviet administration system suffered from corruption, but no step was taken to remedy it. Number 5. The government affairs had more privileges than the ordinary citizen. As a result, the people felt disappointed. Number 6. Nationalist pressures also led to the block up the USSR. Question number 12. Do you think that India and Russia have maintained good relations? Give 4 reasons. India had a special relationship with the USSR. It was a relationship in all areas: political, economic, military, and cultural. Political. The USSR supported India's position in the KHIS, KHIS, in the Christmas. KSH, Kashmir issue in the UN. India supported India during its major conflicts, particularly during the war with Pakistan in 1971. India also supported the USSR in many ways. Number two, economic. The USSR gave aid and technical assistance to India for steel plants like Bhilai, Pokaro, Vishakhapatnam, and Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. It accepted Indian currency for trade when India was short of foreign currency. Number 3. Military. India received most of its military equipments from the USSR. The two countries signed various agreements to jointly produce military equipment. Number 4. Cultural. CULTURL. Cultural. Hindi films and India culture were popular in the USSR. Many Indian writers and artists visited the USSR. Question number 13. What were the consequences of shock therapy in post-communist region? Was it the best way for transition from communism to capitalism? The shock therapy did not produce the desired results. It had negative consequences. Number one, shock therapy brought ruin to the economic of the post-Soviet republics in Russia. The states controlled these industrial complex collaborates. About 90% of its industriality were put up for sale to private industrials and companies. The value of the ruble, the Russian currency, declined. The rate of inflation was high and people lost all their savings. Number 3. The collective farm system disintegrated. People had not food security. Number 4. The old system of social welfare was destroyed. The government withdrew subsidies and therefore many people became poor. Number 5. Post-Soviet states were divided in between rich and poor regions. There was great economic inequality between people. Number 6. As a result of shock therapy, about half of Russia's 1500 banks and other financial institutions became bankrupt. Number 14. What were the factors that forced Gorbachev to initiate the reform in the USSR? Number 1. Revolutionary changes were taken place in the field of information and technology in the Western world and Soviet Union lagged behind them. The countries had become stage at administratively and politically. Number 2. The Soviet Union was using much of its resources in building a nuclear and military arsenal and the development of its starlight states in the Eastern Bloc. This led to a huge economic burden on the Soviet economy. Number 3. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 weakened the Soviet system even further, though West continued to grow productivity and technology fall much behind the West. This led to stone stages in consumer goods. Food imports increased every year. Thus, the Soviet economy had become stagnant. Question number 15. Mention any two factors that distinguish the Soviet economy from that of a capitalist country. Soviet economy was a socialist economy, while US economy is a capitalist economy. Number two, Soviet economy was totally in the hand of government. Private ownership of a property was not allowed. On the other hand, in capitalist countries, institution of private property exist. In Soviet Union, collective farming controlled by the states was followed, while in capitalist countries like USA, system of private farming is followed. Briefly discuss about the condition of Soviet Union after the Second World War. After the Second World War, the Soviet Union economy was very good. It was more developed than any other state except USA. It had vast energy resources including oil, iron, steel, good communication network and a transport system that connected even the remotest areas. It had a domestic industry which produced everything from pennies to cars. The state ensured a minimum standard of living for all its citizens as the government subsidized all the basic necessities of life, including education and health care. There was no unemployment, all the means of production were owned and controlled by the states. Why did why the people of Soviet Union were not satisfied with the Soviet system? Give four reasons. The people of Soviet Union were not satisfied with the Soviet system because of the following drawbacks of the Soviet system. The Soviet system was highly bureaucratic and authoritarian. It was not democratic, it was rather highly centralized. The Soviet citizen had no freedom of speech and expression. The one party system had tight control over all institutions. The Bolshevik party was not accountable to the people. Number 5. The party even did not allow the Union republics to manage their own affairs, including cultural affairs. Number 6. Russia was one of the 15 Union republics that formed the Soviet Union, but Russia dominated everything. The people of other Union republics were neglected and oppressed. Correct the statement. Stalin introduced reforms in the Soviet Union. Answer. Mikhail Gorbachev introduced reforms. On what ideology the Soviet Union was based? The Soviet Union was based on a socialist ideology. Who became the sole superpower after the disintegration of the Soviet Union? The USA became the sole superpower after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Write the names of two countries which emerged after Soviet disintegration: the Baltic, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and East European states became members of the European Union. Mention two reforms which Gorbachev initiated in the USSR. Gorbachev introduced reforms such as glasnost and perestroika. What was the final and most immediate cause for the disintegration of the USSR? The rise of nationalism and the for sovereignty within various republics, including Russia and Baltic Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Russia and the Baltic Republic, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Ukraine, Georgia, and others proved to be the most immediate cause for the disintegration of the USSR.